Hello students, I hope y'all are well. This is super exciting. We're on the last module, hooray. So we'll be looking at part one today, which is all about birds. And I think birds are super cool and exciting. So you know how I get when I have those kind of things is I'll probably give you a little more information than the book offers, but it's all interesting information, okay? And then next week we'll cover the mammals, and that'll be it for the year. So congratulations, you're doing great. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to look at the characteristics of birds. They belong in a class called aves. Aves, okay? So that means everything that has to do with the bird. So what makes something a bird? What are the criteria? So let's take a look. First of all, they're endothermic. Remember what that means? That means that they are able to control their temperature, right? So like we can, they're warm-blooded. They shiver to warm up, and then they fluff their feathers to either warm up or cool down, that kind of thing. Okay, so they're warm-blooded. They have a four-chambered heart. I believe that's the first critter, right, that we've encountered that has a four-chambered heart. Like mammals, like we have a four-chambered heart, two upper chambers and two lower chambers. I'll get a picture of that in a minute here. They have a toothless bill. There are some birds that have little ridges on their bills, but they're not, they're not like teeth that fall out, so they're part of the actual bill, but they look a little bit like teeth, but they're more like ridges that are just part of the bill. They are oviparous. Remember what that means? That means they lay eggs. They use an amniotic egg that's covered with calcium carbonate. So that's different from the reptiles who have sort of that leathery covering. Everyone knows about birds' eggs. I'm sure you use them and eat them and that kind of thing. And you know how that shell is hard, right? It's hard and it's made of a calcium substance, sort of a chalky substance. And honestly, it's pretty amazing how a bird can make the egg inside their body and lay the egg with the shell on it. It's quite a fun little process there. They do have feathers, so all birds do have feathers in one form or another. Okay, and they have generally porous, lightweight bones, and we'll get to the reason for that. You might be guessing at this point they need to be somewhat lightweight and maybe not so huge. So they can fly. But notice that flying is not one of the criteria of the characteristics of birds, right? Because we know, and famously, there are some what we call flightless birds, birds that never fly, right? And in those cases, many of those cases, we'll look at that a little more closely, they don't have the porous, lightweight bones. They have more solid bones, okay? All right, so we'll get to that. If you need to pause this so you can write down all these characteristics, these 6 things are something that would very easily show up on a final exam or a quiz or a test. So these are good things to know. All right, the general look of a bird. Now we have different birds, different shapes, that kind of thing, but generally we're looking at this right here. This is a picture of what I would call a songbird, right? Usually a generally small bird. This looks like maybe a finch or one of those, sparrow, maybe a sparrow. But generally what we have, of course, is they have a head, they have an eye, they have a mouth, they have their wings, and their legs right here. Yes, right. So they just have the 2 limbs that they walk on. Then they have, these would be considered, their feathers, their wings would be considered their arms, if you will. And I'm sure you know this, but the tail is just feathers that sticks out past them. You probably know that from chickens, right? When you get a chicken in the grocery store, a whole chicken, they don't have a giant tail hanging off the end because their tail is made up of feathers. Yeah, tail feathers. And so we'll look a little more closely at these feathers and stuff like that. So that's sort of our external anatomy, general look at a bird here. I think in the past I have dissected birds. It's not easy to do, to get into their inner parts. Let me give you the next picture, show you the internal anatomy. To get in to see all this stuff, you have to get through their breast muscle. And generally, the breast muscle of a bird is very thick. Yeah, so you might have known that when you eat chicken breast, right? It's pretty thick. So it was hard to get in there. But if you were to get into a bird, you'll see all this excellent internal anatomy. Everything's looking very familiar now. We have the esophagus and the stomach down here. Where does it say stomach? It says gizzard right there. They have a little more action going on in their digestive system. And the reason for that is that they eat a lot of, hard seeds and things like this often. And when that happens, they have to break those up, and so they'll use the crop here to break that stuff up a little more, because they don't crunch it with teeth, right? They don't crunch food like we do. So they crunch it up here, and then it goes to the gizzard, where some more digestion takes place. I'm a little surprised they don't show me the actual stomach. Are they just maybe they're referring to the gizzard as the stomach? I'm not sure. The liver's quite large, we're seeing here. Our intestine, of course, part of the digestive system. Kidney, lung, heart, right there. Yeah, four-chambered heart, right. Okay, so that's the internal anatomy of most birds, right? They're going to have, all birds are going to have all this, and they do breathe with lungs, for instance, and we know about their heart. So here's their four-chambered heart. Here's a model of it. We have two upper chambers called atria, the right and left atrium, so the right atrium, the left atrium, the right ventricle, and the left ventricle. Okay, so that's very similar to what our heart looks like, except ours is a little more round and larger, and you can see that this thick muscle right here is to pump out of the aorta and into the whole body, and then this smaller chamber just goes and pumps to the lungs. That's why this side doesn't have to be as muscular as this side. That's the same in mammals, which we'll get to next week. All right, so looking at birds, bird watching, if you will. Perhaps you know somebody who is a bird watcher. I had a nephew recently say, oh, I could tell these were old people at that house because they had a bird feeder out there. And I said, oh, no, because I have a bird feeder, because I love watching birds. And so there are certain birds that will come to a bird feeder and certain birds that won't. And it has to do with what do they eat. So if you pay close attention to the beak of a bird, you can predict what they're going to eat, okay? So we can see right here, for instance, the duck has a flat bill coming out like this, right? Kind of elongated and flat, and they have the little ridges on there. I mentioned that before, these little ridges. And they tend to, depending on the duck, I love ducks, depending on the duck, they tend to eat grasses and things like this, but they can eat other things as well. Some of them are actually omnivores. Some of them eat bugs and things like that. So we'll get to that, but they have that flatter beak for picking up grasses. The gull right here, the gull can eat fish. As you know, seagulls are going to eat pretty much anything. Cheetos, right? You throw them up there and they'll like those. But they do have a pretty substantial beak that they're able to crunch things and grab a hold of things like fish and things like that. Eagles have a very sharp beak. That beak right there could break your finger. It's sharp, but it also is strong muscular, because they're going to be eating small creatures, mice and other, rodents and things like that, sometimes bigger. Okay, the crossbill is interesting. I don't know that I know of, I can't tell you a bird that's like this. There's one, I guess, called the red crossbill. That's its name, I think. And that crossbill helps them actually tear into a pine cone. So the pine cone, remember we learned about pine cones, that they have seeds in there, right? It's sort of like the flower of a conifer tree. So they have that crossbeak that will kind of flip up that scale of that pine cone, and they can get the seed out of there. All right, a hawk would be similar to our eagle. It has a pretty sharp beak. Our avocet has a long beak. It can reach into places to get little bugs out, usually in the sand, typically in the beach. Woodpecker, we have those around here in Texas. They have that sharp beak that they can drill into a tree, and they can listen and hear little bugs crawling around inside of a tree. They can bore a little hole with that, and then they have this crazy tongue that comes out of their head, kind of unravels through their head, out of their beak, and they can go get that bug. Parrots here, they can eat fruit. They can tear fruit apart with that somewhat hollow bill right there. Flamingos are very specific eaters. I'll show you that in a little more detail when we get to the specifics of this critter. He actually puts his head upside down and sifts water through it. The kiwi, Australian bird, right, can stick its long beak down into the dirt and find some bugs and things like that. The spoonbill is going to be eating typically marine creatures, as will the pelican. They have that. Pelican scoops up a big gulp of water and then keeps the fish in his beak and then swallows those. Yeah, so very specific. There are other ones, but these are the main ones. But you can predict what they eat just by looking at that. Okay, so the birds I see at my bird feeder are all mostly seed eaters, obviously, because I'm putting seeds out for them. But a finch will have a sharper beak, a tougher beak than, say, a house sparrow has a very small beak, and they can eat the smaller of the seeds. Okay, you can also predict where they live by looking at their feet. Okay, we have a couple here at the top that have some webbing. So the mallard is like a duck. They can swim. Now, the coot is also a marine creature, but it walks more than it swims, but it has like a semi-webbed foot right there. The hawk is going to be able to grasp things that it flies down and picks up a critter. The woodpecker, this is interesting. It's got four like this. The woodpecker needs to hold on, you can imagine, very tightly to the side of a tree in order to slam its beak into it and make that little hole. The grouse is also a marine creature that has pretty long legs. I don't know, it doesn't seem like they're webbed in there, but they do some walking in the marine habitats. Our ostrich is a flightless bird, very large, very heavy, and they have very strong feet, for walking. They're going to be walking birds. Running, too. We'll get to that. Parrot perching right here. They're going to perch very strongly on a branch, as will the crow. So we have the four like this, similar to the woodpecker. The woodpecker's holding onto the side of a tree. The parrot's holding onto a branch. The crow's holding onto the branch. The jacana right here is a bird that belongs in the group with, I think, let me see, with like seagulls and stuff like that. And so it's a marine creature, and it does have long legs, and it uses its wide feet to walk on wet sand and things like that. Okay, so another thing of paying attention to birds' feet, and you can give an idea of where they live. Pretty cool. Nice order there. All right, embryology. Remember, they have amniotic eggs with a hard shell. We're looking at a picture up there on the left. And we're going to see here what happens. So the fertilization does take place internally. So the male will fertilize the egg through sexual reproduction. Once it's fertilized, all these yolks, essentially inside the belly, the womb of the female chicken. I'm thinking of a chicken right now because that's a chicken egg we're looking at right there. She has all these yolks just sitting there waiting to get fertilized. And when they get fertilized, that happens here in the germinal disc. They still make an egg if it's not fertilized, right? You know that, right? That germinal disc. If you've ever eaten, wild eggs or whatever, sometimes that germinal disc will be red, and that means that it is fertile. A fertilized egg, which is fine. You can eat those. Some people think they're more nutritious. I'm not sure if that's the case. Okay, but look how quickly our little zygote can develop, okay? So the chick will begin to grow. We have 18 hours. The brain, wow, that makes sense because they need to, run the rest of their body. Digestive, circulatory. Look, we're just in hours here, y'all. The heart is beating at 38 hours, 56 hour. The specifics of the brain system are forming here. Formation complete, 21 days. 500 hours. Is that what it says? 500 hours? 21-day gestation and a little chick comes out. That's pretty amazing. And when we're thinking about a chicken, in fact, they come out ready to just go out and just eat the food, right? Pretty cool. So this is an artist's rendition of how it develops over time. It gets fertilized and it doesn't really get covered with the actual egg for a little while there. That is a little deceiving that egg's around them. Egg's kind of one of the later things. Look at our cute little chick right there. Okay, I think we're going to watch a little video. Oh, wait, we're going to see some pictures. Those are actual photos. All right, of the little creature developing right there. All right. Here it is. Look, we can see eyes and a beak. And this yolk, of course, is their food source. This is day 10 already. Wow. Okay, here's a little video that's going to take us through that process. All right, so you saw a nice animation there to show that development. The diversity of eggs is quite amazing. You can see here, like somebody who has a collection of them. Excuse me. Oftentimes, people when they collect eggs, they'll blow out the inner parts of them, and therefore they'll just have the eggshell to keep that. Now, I will tell you this: as far as it goes for collecting wild eggs, you can't do it; it's illegal. So don't pick up a bird's eggs; leave them alone. In fact, you can't collect anything from a wild bird. You can't collect a feather. You can't collect you find a skeleton, you cannot touch it. Okay, it's a federal law. So you can't touch a nest. Yeah, anything that's wild. So there are quite some pretty severe protective measures put in for wild birds. I'm not talking about pet birds. Like I have a friend who raises peacocks, and so it's fine to collect their feathers and stuff like that. Okay, the domestic birds are fine. It's just the wild birds. Yeah, you got it when you're out in the wild. I have had students collect things they didn't know it was illegal and give them to me as an educator. I'm able to. It's okay for me to keep those, but I'm not supposed to collect them either. Sometimes you find a nest or something in a place that's inconvenient, like in your lawnmower or something, and you have to touch it. So I don't think anybody's going to arrest you or anything. But the idea is just to be responsible. Okay, so we're taking a look here at a little baby that's been born. Now look how different it is from the chicken. It turns out there are two types of offspring. One is called altricial and one is called precocial. Now the altricial bird is like this little songbird here, is completely and utterly dependent on the parent to feed it. Whereas the precocial bird, like the chick, is ready to go right when it hatches out. So the idea here is that these guys hatch out sooner than their development is finished, whereas the development happens completely inside the egg of the little chick, right? So the video we watched, the egg had already been laid, right? So the egg was there, and then that maturation takes place outside of the mom's body. So here we have less maturing happening in the egg and more happening afterwards. So mama's got to feed these guys. Here's our chicks. They're precocial. The word precocious comes from that. They're ready to go. They hatch out and they're ready to go. All right, feathers. When we talk about flight, when a lot of the birds we're learning about do indeed fly, when we talk about those, the feathers become important, as you can probably imagine. So feathers are growing from follicles in the skin like hair. So you could think of them as specialized hair. They have two basic parts, the shaft and the vein. So the vein is the shaft here. It's coming up like this. That is. And then the vein, okay, where we have the rachis is part of that, and the barbs will be part of the vein, okay? So the vein has parallel barbs that start at the rachis. The barbs have two types of barbules. I'm going to show you a closer up picture here in just a minute. One smooth and the other one hooked. The hook will grab alongside the smooth one, keeping the feather zipped, if you will. It's strong but flexible, okay? So I'm sure you've played with feathers before, and you can see like right here, this has been like open, that little zipper area is open, but if you smooth it with your finger, it will smooth it back down. You may need to draw this, so if you need to do that, you can pause the presentation here and then draw this and label it, of course, right, the parts of the feather. If you have a chance to look at some feathers, for instance, you can purchase them at Hobby Lobby. They sell them in their craft department. They're actual feathers, yeah. Some of them have been dyed funny colors and stuff like that. But a lot of times you can get natural ones, and you can unzip them and look at it closely and zip them back up. These are the barbs and barbules. See, so some of them have the little hooks. Here's the little thing where it hooks on too. So it kind of just zips up right through there. And then when you take it apart, it's almost like you can kind of hear it, kind of that thing. And so since they stick together like that, it gives them that structure. Allowing the contoured feather to allow for flight. So we have the contour feather, which is this one, which has the little zippy things that have the barbs and barbules. And then we have another kind that is called the downy feather, okay? So this right here would be considered a contour feather. And then at the very bottom of most contour feathers, we'll see there is a downy barb down there. That means they're barbless. They don't hook very much on there. And they look a little more like this. You may have had a down pillow before. Down means the downy feathers of a goose or a duck or something like that are used to fill up the pillow, and they make for a nice soft pillow. Sometimes those little feathers will poke out, and you can pull the little shaft and pull a little feather right out of your pillow. Okay, lots of diversity here as well. Look at all those different feathers, the shapes, the colors. Amazing, right? Some of those, of course, are for show. Look at this beautiful creature right here, that rooster with the beautiful colors. I wonder if maybe that's been enhanced a little bit. It's almost hard to believe that such beautiful, colorful roosters are walking around looking like that. But I think they are. I think they look like. I've seen some at least partially this colorful. All right, so let's talk a little bit about flight now. Okay, so in order to fly now, for a long time, humans were trying to figure out how to fly as well, like to make airplanes or whatever, to invent airplanes. And they thought that by watching birds that the flapping was the magic to flight. And it turns out that is not correct. The flapping is the thrust. That's like the engine, if you will. And the flapping is due to all the muscles that are underneath here. Okay. That's the engine. That's going to get them going. But it's really the shape of the wing that gives them lift. So in order to get up, we want to have lift. Okay. And so that, well, I'll show you the shape here in just a second. So those feathers here are going to help in both things. They're going to help in the shape of the wing, and they're going to help in the flapping of the wing and catching hold of the air beneath them, right? So we have these primary feathers right here and secondaries. Then we have the smaller feathers up top here. They're very small right here. The alula right here is very important right there. That's going to be like, it's going to buffet the wind that comes at them. Interestingly, as a vet technician, when I was working in that field, people would bring their pet birds in, like parrots, and the idea was they want a pet bird, but they don't want the bird to fly away, right? They don't want it to escape by flying away. We would take scissors, so we'd leave 1, 2, 3, 4 of the primaries, and these right here, we'd take scissors and just cut right here. It's like getting a haircut. It wasn't painful. We would cut the feathers right here, and it was just enough that they could not get enough thrust to create the lift that they needed. Okay, so they could kind of flop down from a space down to the floor or something like that, kind of catch themselves, if you will. But they couldn't actually get into full flight and escape through a window. So those are important for working up the engine for flight. Here they are. So the primaries 1, 2, 3, 4, and we would cut these right there. The secondaries would all stay. The reason we left the 4 out here is that when they had their wings closed, they would still look beautiful, right? We didn't want to take away from the beauty of them. So nobody could even tell they had those cut right there. This alula is going to turn out to be very important because if you've ever been on an airplane, you know that there is something we call turbulence, right? With the wind coming up, there's the temperature of the wind changing, all this crazy stuff. And so we learned after some time the alula, we put that on the end of on the front of an airplane wing. And that gave us the ability to handle that violent wind coming in. So here's the physics of it. I told you about the shape, right? The shape is important. Once we figured this out, a guy called Daniel Bernoulli was one of the guys that helped to figure this out. It turns out the wind rushes over, sorry you can't see that as well, it rushes over the top at a different speed than the bottom. Okay, so it kind of slows down, causing it to have more pressure under here, causing it to lift up. Now that's a physics deal. All right, so their strong muscles are going to give them their engine, and then the shape are going to create the lift. Okay, the alula right here on the front of the wing allows the air to sweep over the wing and change the airflow. It really does handle some of that difficult air. Okay, so you can see different birds here in flight, and I think we're going to watch a little video. Okay, here we go. This is an airplane. How an airplane would lift the wing up. I mean, the whole airplane's headed up, right? They're kind of to pull up like this, and the air starts to run over it. And as we're cruising, the air is coming over slower, causing lift underneath right there. Bernoulli's principle. You can look that up. There we go. Causing the air to rush past. The bones, the flight is possible because the weight of the bird is reduced because of the structure of the bone. You see inside a bone, it's hollow. You probably know this from a chicken bone. If you break it, remember we don't want to feed it to our dogs because they're too brittle. Or they're brittle because they're hollow inside. All right? They're hollow inside. They have these air-filled cavities, yet they have these things that are kind of like struts right here that give it strength. So they're still strong, but lightweight. I have a little picture of an airplane here. This airplane's trying to fly as well. Notice how it's got hollow right here, but covered with something so the air can flow past it. These are called struts. All that little wooden stuff right there is called struts. That actually, airplane, apparently, once you put an engine on it, can actually fly. All right, so the internal structure right here, we can see they have this very strong sternum, that is the breastbone. The breast meat, of course, will hang on to here. That's why the breast meat of a bird is large. It's because they need all of that for flight. Now, if you think about a chicken, we generally feed the chickens a lot, so they're heavy and fat. They don't fly. I mean, can they fly? Sure, yeah. But since we feed them so much, their breast meat gets so well developed. We bred them that way, the heavy, because we can eat them. So they don't typically fly. You know, they're domesticated, right? They don't fly. They're not going to fly away. Okay, that kind of thing. But in a wild animal, let's think about a duck, for instance. I don't know if you've ever eaten duck meat, duck breast. It's very dark. It's dark, like dark meat. And the reason is because they use that muscle a lot more, so therefore there's more blood supply. That's why the meat is dark. On a chicken, the dark meat is considered the leg and the thigh, right? Because guess what? They're using it. They're walking around on it. There's more blood supply there. Their breast muscle doesn't have as much blood supply because they're not flying. But a wild bird would. If you had a wild chicken, it would have a darker breast meat as well. Okay, we have a little video to talk about flight.
You're going to need specialized muscles to move those wings, so your pectoral muscles in particular are going to be very large.
Hundreds of muscles, tendons, and ligaments power a diverse range of wing movements. The centerpieces of this system are the flight muscles. Pectoralis major, and beneath it, supracoracoideus. Together, they form the engines of avian flight. When the pectoral muscles contract, they pull the humerus bone in each wing down, creating thrust and lift. In immediate response, the supracoracoideus, connected by a tendon to the top of the humerus, works like a pulley to lift the wing every time the muscle contracts.
This is another terrific design because this pulley system eliminates the need for a large, heavy muscle above the shoulder to lift the wing back up. Instead, the flight muscles are all below the wings, where they help create a compact center of gravity that really stabilizes the bird's body in the air.
All right, there you go. Pretty cool. I thought that was pretty good animation there. All right, songbirds. A lot of birds make noise, you know, but the songbirds are the little ones you hear outside in the springtime, all beautiful and everything. They have this incredible ability to make beautiful music. They use it for attracting mates. They communicate with fellow birds. Every songbird has its own unique song. The bird is creating it through its elaborate larynx. So larynx is a voice box. I'm using my voice box right now speaking to you. Let's listen to one bird. I don't know that I know what bird this is, but let's listen. Oh, more than one. Okay, you're getting the idea though, right? Okay, so you understand. So, oh my God, that goes on forever. Ornithologists or people who study birds, you can get a degree in ornithology if you like. An ornithologist would probably know exactly what bird we were listening to right then. I don't know. I mean, around here you can hear one and say, "Oh, I know that one. I know that one." Of course, in Texas we have the mockingbird who makes everybody's sound. But speaking of that, this is probably the most amazing of the imitator birds. Let's watch this.
What bird has the most elaborate, the most complex, the most beautiful song in the world? I guess there are lots of contenders, but this bird must be one of them. The superb lyrebird of South Australia. space in the forest to serve as his concert platform. To persuade females to come close and admire his plumes, he sings the most complex song he can manage, and he does that by copying the songs of all the other birds he hears around him, such as the kookaburra. It's a very convincing impersonation. Even the original is fooled. He can imitate the calls of at least 20 different species. He also, in his attempt to outsing his rivals, incorporates other sounds that he hears in the forest. That was a camera shutter. And again. And now a camera with a motor drive. And that's a car alarm. And now the sounds of foresters and their chainsaws working nearby.
Okay, pretty amazing. The lyrebird. So it's trying to attract a mate, of course, and I think he said it's South Australia. That's David Attenborough, who's one of the greatest, nature guys around. Still around. Old. He's been making these movies for a long time. Documentaries, right. So another fun one to look up, if you have to do a report or something for biology this year for your, assignments or whatever, the lyrebird's a pretty cool one, and then the bowerbird. The bowerbird's the one that collects blue things to make a nest. He always finds anything blue. Blue pens, blue car keys, things like that. Okay, let's take a look at the difference of these birds between male and female. As you know, I'm sure, the males are the flashier of the ones, right? So here we're looking on the left would be the male cardinal, and on the right would be the female. And so we tend to see in the bird kingdom the bird grouping that the males are more colorful. Okay, and you probably know why, right? The female is going to be easier to hide, because if she's taking care of the eggs, she's going to be easier to have camouflage and not be seen very easily. A real dramatic difference here would be our peacock. So that's the peacock there on the right with his beautiful tail feathers, which he does put up. Hopefully you've seen this before, where they put it up and then they shake them, and it makes this rattling sound that's super impressive in order to impress, yes, the peahen. So that is the peahen over here. We tend to call them all peacocks, but it's really the peacock and the peahen. All right. Not all birds can fly. Can you name some that can't fly? I'm sure you can. Let's talk about the famous flightless birds. Here we go. The ostrich, right? They're very tall. They're very heavy. Look at those feet. Remember we talked about the feet earlier. They are runners. They're pretty good runners, pretty fast. People talk about how ostriches will bury their head in the sand, and basically they're talking about, they're just ignoring what's going on around them. And that's not true. They don't actually bury their head in the sand, but when they eat, they do put their head way down to the ground to go get the food that's down there. So their head is down a lot like that. I've also heard tale that if you are being chased by ostriches, because they can be kind of mean, they might run after you and try to peck you or something, and they're pretty strong, right? My understanding is if you lay down flat, they can't see you very well. I don't know if that's true, but if they do stomp on you, that would be painful. Of course, the famous penguins. Penguins do not fly. In fact, their wings are really sort of have an adaptation that make them more like a flipper. So they swim really great in the ocean. They do not have hollow bones. I know that for 100% for the penguin. I'm pretty sure the ostrich is the same way. They do not have hollow bones. This picture right here, okay, this is a kiwi, the kiwi bird of New Zealand. Also flightless. Notice their feathers. See, the feathers are all pretty much downy. They don't have any contour feathers. You know, neither does the ostrich. There's no contour feathers. That's why they're so fluffy looking, because everything's a downy feather, because they don't fly. They don't need the contour feathers. Same with the kiwi. Okay, I guess I'm going to show you the penguin in a minute. Birds of prey. Here is our beautiful regal bald eagle, right? Just gorgeous. They're not really bald. They just have a, you know, white feathered head right there. So, but these birds of prey have beautiful contour feathers right here. They are definitely flighted birds. They can fly beautifully and soar and dive, and pretty much like a trick airplane, pilot. Other birds of prey. Here we have the owl. We're going to get into this a little more in a minute. We have a little video to watch on that one. Other unique types of birds. Okay, so here we have a little, chart to talk about it. So we're going to be looking at a unique type of bird here who sweeps the water to eat its food. Any guesses? One who uses really rapid wing beats. I bet you can figure that one out. And then game birds. Game birds would be birds that we hunt and eat, okay? They're game, right? They're fair game. Ducks, for instance. So let's see. I'm going to release this now. So flamingos will sweep the water to eat. Rapid wing beat, I bet you got that. Hummingbirds. Quail is a game bird. So a duck would be in that as well. Some people might put geese in there with that. All I know is if you want to buy a goose for Christmas or whatever, they're very expensive. Yeah, they're quite large, yeah. So, all right, the next unique types here we're going to be looking, can you think of a swimming bird, a diving bird, and a wading bird? These would all be water creatures. Let's see, our swimming bird, ducks and swans. Our diving birds, albatross and pelican. And then game birds, wading birds, herons, and some of those, we looked at a couple of those, right? Because flamingos would fit in there as well as being a wading bird. Okay, so that's a little chart. If you need to copy that down, go for it. All right, now we're going to be looking at the major orders of the birds, okay? They have these crazy names for them. By the time you get to college, these names may have changed somewhat in the sense that they might be classifying all animals differently than we do now. Instead of like the kingdom system, I might be using a different system. But this is, at this time, as far as I know, as far as your book knows, these are still accurate terms right now. There is a chart on page 638 in your book. And so let's check out what we've got. So our first group we'll be looking at here would be the Aciniformes, right? So we will see the Aciniformes. We're looking there at the beautiful swan and her little babies coming up beside her, right, following her. We're going to talk about animal behavior a little bit in the next week when we look at the mammals, but so birds would be part of that group. So in other words, we'll talk about birds a little bit more next week as well. Okay, so we have our swans. We have our geese. That looks like a Canada goose right there. They fly to Canada during the summer. And we have our ducks. Now, I happen to be a big fan of ducks in many ways. I think they're beautiful. They are quite tasty. I like to eat duck. It's very good. I don't hunt. I'm not a hunter. But I think just even going and feeding the ducks at a pond somewhere is just so much fun. Right, we're looking at there is called a mallard. It's kind of famous with its green head. But we have some crazy looking ones. Look at this one. Okay, so I'm trying to remember that. I believe that is a mandarin duck. I have another picture of a mandarin. We'll compare it in just a minute. It almost looks fake, right? It looks like, that somebody's painted this. Now, keep in mind that duck hunters will make models of ducks out of wood and paint them to draw other ducks in, right? So this one, for instance, is called a wood duck. Now, it's not a wooden duck. It's called a wood duck. I think it lives near the woods or whatever, something like that. But it looks like somebody made it out of wood. It's so amazing looking. This is the male. He's very colorful. There is a little bit, I read a couple of places that their foliage even gets brighter during mating season. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But look how beautiful. It looks like he's wearing a hood, on his head there. Beautiful, beautiful. Here's our mandarin guys again. So does that look like the one I showed you a minute ago? I think probably so. The mandarins, just beautiful little creatures right there. Okay, I don't know that if people shoot those and eat them. I have no idea. They look like they're from a zoo or something. Okay, Apodiformes right here. So we're going to see this group, and we can see the name. This one in particular belonging to that group would be our hummingbirds. We, of course, have hummingbirds in Texas and the southern part of the United States. Beautiful creatures. Nice photograph there that he's completely still. You know, he's not blurry. Typically, you see him and their wings are beating so fast. That's why they're humming. That they're just a blur. There's also another critter in here called a swift. And they're also quite beautiful. Lovely plumage on those guys too. All right, Corydoformes right here. Our Corydoformes are going to be our plovers. That is a plover we're looking at here. And then, of course, we have our seagulls. I think that's a paint. He's standing in front of a painting or something right there. And then one called a tern. These are all seabirds. Yeah, they're flying around in the ocean. The jacana, the one I told you about earlier who had that funny foot kind of thing, the jacana is also in this group. All right, the Siconiformes right here. We're going to see the Siconiformes are going to be our herons. So we have our great herons, our blue herons. Oh, I don't have a blue heron. Those are both great herons right there. We have those in the coast. You'll see those even along rivers and lakes even, because they're going to, anywhere where there's fish, they're going to go fishing. Look at that beak, you can tell. They have a fisher beak right there. Going to scoop down and find, they have great eyesight. They can look, they can soar over the water. They can perch somewhere and look and wait, and they can see their creatures. Okay, our Columbiformes right here. We're going to be looking at these guys. These are our pigeons. All right, pigeons are actually quite beautiful creatures. Here's another beautiful pigeon. That's a pigeon. That's his plumage coming up over his head like that. I'm not sure what his story is, that he has such a beautiful necklace of feathers there. It seems like it'd be difficult to see. Beautiful. Look at the feet there. Look at the plumage down there as well. This is a dove. All right, so mourning doves we have around here. Beautiful. They have that lovely, little call that they make, kind of a cooing. It makes them sound sad. That's why they're called mourning. Mourning as in mourning a death, right? mourning, not mourning as in the time of day. They do mate for life. Some people say that if they lose their mate for some reason, then they go around, making that sad noise. They're also quite delicious, honestly. Here is another type of a dove. Falconiformes, right? The falcons will be in this group. This is where the eagles belong. All right, so we have our eagles. Here's our bald eagle, beautiful once again. And we have our hawks. I think that's a golden hawk. We have those in Texas for sure. These are the ones you do not want to accidentally shoot. That's very illegal. You got to leave those guys alone. And we have falcons. All right. Falcons I know can be domesticated. These are the ones that in the old days of the kings and queens, they had falconers that would train them. They put the hood on them and all that kind of stuff, and they could train them to go find things. Yeah, they're pretty smart birds. The Galliformes right here, we've got our turkeys and our quail. That's a quail. You can tell that little thing on the top of his head. That is also a game bird. Both of these are quite delicious. And here is our pheasant, also supposedly good eating. Look at the plumage, beautiful. The grouse belongs to this group as well. We talked about that when we were talking about the feet. The Pelicaniformes, of course, that would be the pelicans, right? I wonder if I'm pronouncing that. Pelicaniformes, I think is how you do it. Also that beak that will extend right to, there it is, extended to scoop up a big bunch of water along with the fish, and then it can swallow those fish. They do have also a very special, almost like airbags right here in their breastbone. They have this extra little air they can put in here, so when they dive straight down into the water, they can hit and not break their bones. And they hit with quite force on there. Notice you can see his feet too, web feet. Looky there. Yeah, we know he lives in the water, right? All right, a Phoenicio. Okay, I don't know if I can. Phoenicopteriformes. Let's see if I can figure that one out. Phoenicopteriformes. Okay. Anyway, it's our beautiful flamingo there with that really unusual beak. You probably all know this. I think you probably watched the Wild Kratts, right? That they're pink because of what they eat. They eat a special shrimp that makes them pink. If you do not feed them that special shrimp, they will turn white. And there are white ones around naturally as well. There's the beak. So this would be, so notice the shape of the beak there. And then they turn their head upside down. And so notice those ridges. Remember, not teeth, but ridges. And what happens is they have a very strong tongue right here. They scoop up even mud and stuff, and then they push their tongue down, and it comes out of their nostrils, squeezes out, and they keep the little shrimp in there, and they swallow them. Yeah, so their head's upside down in the water. Pretty cool. Okay, Procilliformes. Okay, Procilliformes. I think I got it. Procilliformes. We have our some more. This is called an albatross. We're going to watch a little video on them because I love albatross birds. They're pretty cool. And this one is called the petrel. Okay, both marine birds. If you ever take marine biology, you'll learn about these birds. All right, here's my one of my favorite videos of all time.
Each summer, on tiny Midway Atoll, young laysan and black-footed albatrosses are abandoned by their parents. It's time to learn to fly. The young birds are at that awkward teenage stage, with hairdos to match. Instinct and an empty stomach draw them out to the beach, where they see the sea for the first time and test their wings. The first walk to the water's edge can be uncertain, and some turn back to think it over and practice a little more. Thousands of birds come to the sea's edge, ready to try. Maybe. When they enter the water, they often take a drink, their first taste of the sea. Some float out over the waves. Others run. Once they're in, they often drift a while, wings up, and run in again, not ready. But soon, they're running across the surface of the sea, trying to fly. Franz crouched among the birds to photograph them. Just inside the outer reef, the birds took to the air. And outside, on the open sea, adults flew with the grace the young birds will soon have. It won't be long. Within weeks, every young albatross will head to sea and become a real bird.
Okay, yeah, so the albatross, it doesn't even seem like it should be possible that it can fly. I mean, it's got that pretty massive body, right? And then its wings are just longer than its body. In fact, the albatross wingspan is the largest wingspan, I believe, of all the birds, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and I believe it's one of these New World birds. I'm trying to think which one it is that has like a 12-foot wingspan. I mean, that's just crazy. All right, Cichitiformes. All right, we have our parrot. Look at that colorful plumage there. And our parakeet. These can be pets, of course. And our lovebirds. Look how beautiful. They do sell those in a pair. You know, they come together. They mate for life. And they are beautiful. I had a couple of these for a while. They're just noisy, and messy. Yeah, so I had to find a new home for them. Oh, what is this guy? This is the dodo bird. This is, I believe, an artist rendition. We do have a photograph of a dodo bird because they are extinct. It turns out that they... did you notice how those albatross didn't seem to mind that man using his camera? They didn't seem afraid of him at all. And so I'm thinking that atoll, that island that they're on, is probably not, doesn't have people living on it. They just have these people come, so they don't know that they're supposed to be afraid. The dodo bird didn't know it was supposed to be afraid of people. When the sailors would come to on island and found these dodo birds there, they would walk right up to them, you know, and then the sailor could grab them and eat them. They were apparently decent food. I don't know. They are extinct now, but my understanding is we have some DNA somewhere, and somebody somewhere may try to invigorate this bird. I don't know if it'll happen or not. I don't know if I'm for that or against it. I don't know. It'd be cool to see one though, right? Okay, Sphenxiformes. We can see our penguin right here, right? It's in this group. What else is in this group? That's all I have in there. Sphenxiformes is how you pronounce it. And here's what I wanted to show you earlier. These are this is not running backwards, I promise y'all. They do that. They pop out of the water like that. Isn't that crazy? It's not really flying. It's just, what do they grab a hold of to send them up there? I do not know. Struthiniformes, right here we're going to see our ostrich. Look at him, looking at us there. Right into our faces, right there. So, I wonder if an emu might be in this group. Our book doesn't list the emu. Here we can see people who are racing them. Remember, I told you they run pretty fast. These guys have been trained to race. I'm assuming that the men on top of them are fairly smaller people, that not too heavy, like a jockey. You know, our jockeys that ride horses are generally smaller, not as heavy. All right, our Strigiformes right here. We have our beautiful owl. Owls to me, are amazing creatures. There's our barn owl, right? So we have those around here with that heart-shaped face. It actually works as sort of like a little bit of a homing beacon to let that sounds of what they're searching for come. And I don't know, y'all, that's the cutest thing ever. Yeah, right. That's an owlet. That's a baby owl with its big old eyes. They do have that flatter face, and it really is about honing in the sound. Okay, so these guys can fly and hear a creature under the snow. They can hear them in the grasses, and they can, reach down and get down there and find their food. Okay, so they're quite amazing. Now I have this video here. I will warn you that it shows them eating mice. Okay, and what's going on here is that I want to show you how an owl makes what is called an owl pellet. Okay, you maybe when you were younger you may have dissected an owl pellet. For my classes in biology, when we studied the birds, we would dissect the owl pellets here. Okay, so watch this. Yeah.
Scarfing down their food whole keeps barn owls moving. After all, these hungry birds gotta eat. And there are lots of little rodents to hunt. Barn owls need a hole to nest in, and when a tree isn't available, they'll use a building, or an owl box, like this one, in California's Napa Valley. Scientists keep tabs on the owls inside. Wine growers invite barn owls to raise their young in the boxes because owls are pest control machines. I mean, a barn owl family can kill about 3,500 varmints a year. They don't take them all out, but they can make a dent. They particularly like gophers, like this stunner right here. Their constant tunneling damages roots and irrigation lines. And then there's voles, which gnaw on the grapevines. This 2-week-old owl already has the hang of it. But how the heck does it keep down all that food?
Ugh.
Well, it doesn't. Meet the owl pellet. Check out this fur ball. And here's a jaw. Gnarly. The secret to turning this into this is its stomach. It has 2 chambers. The first one oozes digestive juices, like our stomach. The second one, the gizzard, squeezes the remains with powerful muscles. The fats and proteins get absorbed. The fur and bones become tightly compacted. After about 8 hours in the gizzard, the result is one of these beauties. For researchers like Laura Chavez from Cal Poly Humboldt, pellets are forensic evidence. She carefully dissects them to find out how many pesky gophers and voles the owls took care of.
The tail also still has skin on it.
This unlucky rodent had a small skull. It could be a vole. But then she examines the teeth.
The teeth are actually looking more like a gopher's.
They're kind of circular, surrounded by a white ring of enamel. And the first and second teeth are joined by a bridge. Classic gopher trademarks.
If it's a gopher, it's a very young one because this is on the small side.
Sometimes more than one carcass is crammed into a single pellet. This one had 2 gophers. Winegrowers love barn owls for their prolific appetites, but researchers still don't know whether vineyards are an ideal place to raise an owl family. Christian Cortez, a researcher at Cal Poly Humboldt, studies young owls to see how well they're growing. After covering their head to calm them down, he takes a drop of blood and plucks a feather. They will tell him if the owlet is getting enough to eat. Researchers want to know, do owls have enough open space to hunt in? And do the toxic chemicals Napa wine growers sometimes use to kill rodents end up hurting the owls too? As scientists explore these questions, we'll find out if barn owls are really getting a good deal.
Okay, I thought that was just a really good explanation of how the pellets form. So that's, you can get an owl pellet. That might have grossed you out a little bit. And you notice here in this picture, and the lady who was doing it in the video, they're not wearing gloves or anything, right? So you get these pellets, you can buy them. I used to get them at Hobby Lobby. I don't know if they sell them anymore. You can get them at Amazon, and then you can dissect them yourself. They're really cool. You probably have already done it, so that's okay. But it's really cool to see that. And then it kind of lends into our next study. Our next week we'll be talking about mammals, because voles and gophers and mice are mammals, right? So you'll see mammal bones in there. Okay, gang, that's it for this this lesson. Have fun learning about birds. Go outside and look around and see if you can see some birds hanging around. Some of the ones I've noticed recently, now that it's nice and warm, is that the roadrunners are back and they're running around. They can fly, but they mostly like to run on the ground because that's where they find their food, which is like snakes and stuff like that. So they're good to have around. They're beneficial. Okay, hope everybody has a great week, and I'll be back with you next week.